property's interesting, and I'm not going to get into residential property. As I've said for years, that's a mug's game. There is no logic. Move on. Commercial property is really interesting. And in my last briefing with the network, I talked about retail. Retail has been in trouble for a long time. And and I know you know this, if you go to somewhere, if you go to the US and you go to some of the big malls in California, they don't actually have anchor tenants because Westfield was trying to remix away from, let's call it Macy's or Myer, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. And they tried to make them destination places, and they've done a couple of those, and then they sold. Obviously, Unibail or Damco offered a large amount of money, and they sold out. But malls are in a world of strife, and they're going to have to find their new reason for being. But retail comes in two forms, if you like. Places you have to go to pick up your groceries, your grogs, and your fags, and places you go to pick up fashion items that isn't called Amazon or online. So those valuations are starting to look interesting, be they listed or unlisted. So I'll get you to comment on that. My sort of view on office is, I sort of a bit of a subscriber to the Jones Lang view that in time, people will want to go back to the office. And I know you're in the office at the moment. I'm not in the office. I haven't been in the office for a decade. You know, I'm sort of Lincoln lawyers here. So office, I think we'll see those really big buildings in CBDs. We will see in Australia a manifestation of America where you have your out of town suburban office, and then there'll be offices in town. I think that the big office is under threat. Maybe not in South Australia because not as many people travel so far and for so long. And then industrial, where you need about 4.5 square metres per person in distribution. Those land values and asset values are holding up, and certainly the guys who are as busy as anyone on the planet are cardboard manufacturers. And it's now cheaper to get your dog food delivered than it is to go and buy it from the shop up the road. So, from a state, and of course State Street, when we talk statewide, sorry, as we talk about infrastructure, you guys have got Adelaide Airport, which is obviously now a Virgin Airways plane parking yard. How are you seeing it? And you've got your unlisted property assets as well.
So the one thing we did in property, and we discussed this very early on when you were diligencing us at Shartru, we only played really core commercial property, core industrial, no development, no B grade. So we stayed lowly geared A grade property. And I think it is so uncertain that you've just described nicely that those properties will be okay. So if you don't have a lot of gearing and you've got good anchor tenants who will have people come back, they'll be okay. I mean, they took a hit this year, obviously, they'll be okay. There'll be a growth of industrial, but playing the quality in. You're going to see a lot of backyard operators doing industrial in the same way you saw a lot of property syndicate doing C or B grade property thinking it was A grade. They're going to be nuked. It's a bit like the strip malls in the US. They're going to be nuked, right? That's an industrial wasteland for them. Then you're going to have to be really smart about how you play it. On the infrastructure, you're right. You've got a temporary dislocation in airports, toll roads, and that dislocation started in March this year. It'll unwind probably in about 12 months. So somewhere between March next year and October, you'll see people come back. Clearly, the Prime Minister's already pushing that the bubbles start opening in terms of travel. That's what we're hearing from our airport exposure, that people want to start traveling from Christmas.